So the topic today is communism in crisis. That is actually the topic of paper 1. So you have 3 papers at the end of the year. The first one is paper 1. Paper 1 is Communism in Crisis, 1976 to 89. The good thing about paper 1 is you have 5 documents to look at that are all about Communism in Crisis, 1976 to 89. So you have documents and you answer the questions using the documents. The last question, it asks you to use the documents and your own knowledge to answer whatever other question they have. Of all the 3 papers, it is definitely the easiest one because you have documents to look at. It's also the smallest time frame. When we get to April, so after the first week of April, so starting the second week of April, we have 3 weeks where all we do is prepare for the exam. So you'll see exactly the types of questions they ask you and what they look like, how to study for it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But you do need to have a background. So the years are important because it's only 1976 to 89. It does not go past 1989. So communism is still going on in China today. So they are going to make the cutoff 1989. So our lecture actually goes through 1989 today for China. And then tomorrow we'll go back and we'll look at other countries in crisis during the same time frame. Okay? Moving on. All right. So I'm taking you to, all of today is about China. So just to refreshify your memory, pre-World War II, Mao Zedong is fighting against Chiang Kai-shek. Mao Zedong's a communist trying to overthrow Chiang Kai-shek. They fall into civil war, they're fighting each other, and then in 1937, Japan invades China. So the 2 of them have to stop fighting each other, join together to try to fight Japan. This goes on for years and years and years. In 1945, Japan loses, China is left alone, Japan is gone, and then they resume fighting. So they've been fighting forever and ever and ever, and then in 1949, Mao wins. Chiang Kai-shek flees the country to Taiwan, claims that this is now China, and now we have 2 Chinas. Communist China is banned from the UN, so we don't actually deal with Communist China. We sever relations with Communist China, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All right, so now we go back to what is going on in China. So I'm so sorry, but you have to know their names. And I am so sorry for everyone who's Chinese and how I butcher these names. Okay, so we know Mao. He's like the guy who led the revolution, the guy who defeats Chiang Kai-shek. He is the guy. But once we get to it's over, it's 1949, et cetera, it's done, he doesn't become the acting leader in China. So he is more like the figurehead of the Communist Party in China, and he appoints Zhu Enlai to be the premier. So this is the guy that people equate with the leader of the government in China. And he is like saying Stalin, the premier, the leader, the one who's responsible for laws. That is our guy, Zhu. All right, who I think is actually pronounced Joe, but whatever. I'm going to call him Zhu because it starts with a Z, and that way I can remember which one it is. So he is really the guy who makes the laws. Now, Mao's still there, and if Mao tells him, I don't want that done, then Zhu won't do it. I mean, he'll do whatever Mao says. Mao has like supreme authority, like the Emperor of Japan kind of thing. But that's not often. Mao entrusts pretty much all political power into Zhu, and Zhu is the one that people recognize as the leader of China. So when I told you back in the day that Mao started making all these changes in China to try to help the peasants and bring irrigation, it's really Zhu the one making the laws. Mao's the one saying we need this to happen, and so Zhu's trying to figure out how to get it all done. And he's the one that people equate to really helping poor people in the rural countryside of China and modernizing it. So they're both pretty revered in China, still, all right, to this day. Now, this guy, Deng Xiaoping, he's with them. He fights with them in the revolution, he sticks with Mao, helps set up the government, and he and Zhu are pretty good friends. So Zhu is made the premier, and Deng's like, I have all these great ideas, this is what we should do. So all through the 1950s, when they're bringing rudimentary development to the rural parts of China, Deng's right there with them. But then so he supports, so this is all I'll say, he supports Mao, all right, in pretty much everything. However, there's only one area where he does not agree with Mao. And Mao is adamant that he does not want this, and that is the economy. Mao is 100% socialist. Like, the government needs to control everything. It's the only way communism works. How can we bring, rudimentary development to rural China if we're having, private companies do this? So Mao is adamant that China had to be socialist, where Deng doesn't agree. Deng believes that if you want China to be successful in the modern world, this is the 1950s and 60s, if you want China to be successful, we have to go capitalist. You have to bring in private enterprise. So he wants capitalism, and it is the one area of contention between him and Mao. And even though he and Xu are really good friends, Xu will always side with Mao, the supreme leader. So Deng's really pushing for it. I mean, this is the way, if we want to enter the modern, this is what has to happen to enter the modern world, blah, 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 blah. So we get into the 1960s, all kinds of craziness going on in the world, right? Vietnam's going on, there's all kinds of craziness going on in America, the civil rights movement, and all these crazy things happening in the world. And Mao is starting to become concerned that Deng actually poses a threat to him. Not necessarily to him personally, but to China's way of life and socialism. So Mao, because he is Mao and can do whatever he wants, Mao orders something called the Cultural Revolution. The Cultural Revolution, where he has all the media in China, so radio, television, all the media in China, all the propaganda coming out from the government is how capitalism is threatening China's survival. And these capitalists that are trying to woo you over with their great ideas, all they're doing is fragmenting a united China. We have grown so well. We have helped the masses so easily because we are one country, one united country, and they are threatening to fragment our country. They are hurting us, and that's all the propaganda that you hear. So the masses agree. It's true, because it is fragmenting us. It's the one area where we are fragmented. So the Cultural Revolution encourages the masses to turn on the capitalists, on all these people who want to bring private enterprise and say that that's what we should be doing to make China strong. They're the enemy. And Deng is a capitalist. And even though he is friends with Xu, Mao knew Deng is the biggest threat because he's the one people listen to. So because he is a capitalist, Mao tells his premier, Xu Enlai, we have to deal with him. And Xu was like, you can't kill him. I mean, you make him a martyr. And Mao's like, oh, no, I wouldn't kill him anyway. I mean, he fought with me. I have loyalty to that. But he can no longer serve on the government. Like, having him in the top echelons of the government like we've had is fragmenting the government. He has to go. So he was told, you're going to retire. He was retired. He was forced into retirement. And then, because a socialist nation where the government controls where you work, the only place that he could work was a factory. So they set up a factory far from like Shanghai or Beijing for him to work. And that's where he's sent to work. So he's sent to a factory. This man who fought with Mao at his side to get him into where he was is now like a commoner working in a factory. So he's working in a factory. And he goes to work faithfully every day. And while he's there, he's telling the people who run the factory, like, if this was a capitalist society and you guys are running this factory, you guys would be making bank. Like, workers would have, they'd work stronger and harder because you could give them raises. And if you could give them raises, you would get more productivity. And if you got more productivity, it would make you even more money if we were a capitalist society. And they're like, yeah. So in this factory in the middle of nowhere, he's starting to get followers that are spreading the word to other factories. And so even in this like low life nothing job, he has found a following. However, he's not wrong. Communism is struggling. And once we get into the 60s, every major communist country in the world is struggling. Even the United States is struggling. We're not even communists. But the communist countries are really struggling. And economically. And Mao doesn't know what to do. And Zhu is like, we need ideas. And you know Deng had the ideas. And you sent him away. And Mao's like, he was stirring trouble. And Zhu was like, it's not trouble. He just sees that our economy is flawed and he's trying to fix it. And Mao's like, all right, bring him back. So, bring him back. So so here we go. So there's economic struggles going on in China. In 1974, Mao agrees to bring Deng back. At Zhu, his good friends, urging, Mao agrees to allow Deng to hold a number of offices. Most of the offices he held before he was retired, including vice premier, like vice president. So he is made vice premier again, like he was back in the day, plus he's in charge, the minister of the economy. And they're like, you need to help us fix this. And he's like, I have all these great ideas. So Deng is like in charge of trying to like fix the economy without stepping on Mao's toes, because Mao could have him removed again. Mao could have him executed. Mao could do whatever he wants. So he's trying to figure out a way to incorporate capitalism with socialism without contradicting Marxism, without making Mao mad or the peasants mad or anyone mad. I think he's going to drive him mad. Like, how can you balance all of this? So that's his struggle. All right, he's trying to reconstruct the economy without contradicting Mao. However, so that's what he's working on. So he's working on a way to maybe we can incorporate like some capitalism. So that's what he's working on. And so Zhu is like, you're doing a good job, dang, this is great. Mao is like, meh, we'll see what he comes up with. Mao's wife, who is hardcore socialist Marxist, is like telling Mao, Deng will be the death of us. He is destroying us. And Mao's like, yeah, but let's see what he can do. And Mao's wife, she is incredibly politically driven, hardliner socialist. And she is telling Mao, you can't do this, don't go soft. And Mao's like, well, let's just see what he'll do. Now, Mao's wife belongs to a group that will infamously become known as the Gang of Four. And they are four very, very, very powerful political people, including Mao's wife. She's incredibly powerful. She comes from a very political family. She's not his first wife. All right, he married her because of her political ties later in life, after his first wife was gone. So they're very anti-capitalist, very hardliners. And she's whispering into Mao's ears, like, you have to watch Deng. He is a threat to us. He's a threat to you. He's a threat to China. And after hearing enough of this and Deng not being able to produce something that could work, Mao finally concedes and says, I'm sorry, I gave you a shot. You couldn't fix it. I'm afraid I'm going to have to relieve you of your vice premiership. I need someone who's going to be up there, who can work with Zhu, who can fix things, and it's obvious not you. You can keep your other titles. I still want you in the government. You can't be in charge of stuff anymore. Not like this. So the Gang of Four, including Mao's wife, convinced Mao to relieve Deng of his vice premiership. So he's not vice premier anymore. And then in January of 1976, the premier, Zhu, dies. He has been there since 1949. He is the one who made irrigation and modernization to the peasants. People loved him. They love Mao as well, okay, but they love Zhu because he was really the one making the laws, doing all of this. So when he dies, China falls into a state of mourning. And in Tiananmen Square, in Beijing, there is a monument for mourners. So the idea is if you lost someone in your life and you're there, you would go to Tiananmen Square and there is a monument there for you to honor those whom you've lost. So China has lost a great man. So people from all over China are going there to Tiananmen Square, to this monument, out of respect for Zhu, because they love him. They're leaving things for him there, as people do when someone dies. And the Gang of Four, led by Mao's wife, feel that this is too much. Like, this isn't Mao who died. This is Zhu. This is a worker. And so they felt that the mourning in China had gone on long enough. So they ordered that all of the things that people had left there be removed. So the military comes in and is like, kind of like sweeping all the stuff into the trash. And people were like, no, what are you doing? We haven't finished our mourning yet. What are you? And they're like, well, this is what we're doing. You know, this is coming down from above. This is what's happening. You guys should not. You should be done mourning. And they started banning the wearing of mourning clothing. Anything that would associate the mourning of Zhu is banned. And that's coming down from the Gang of Four. Not really Mao, but Mao's sick. So Mao's not really into what's going on right here anymore. All right. So the Gang of Four, they remove all the mourning stuff. And people begin protesting. I can't believe you're doing this. You should let us. And people are deliberately wearing mourning clothes to defy the government in Tiananmen Square. And the Gang of Four tells Mao, this is revolution. They're inciting revolution. And Mao's like, no, they're not. They're just protesting the loss of a friend. I understand I'm protesting his loss too, but Mao's really sick. So the Gang of Four says, this was a revolution. This is revolution. Protests. How dare they protest? You're not allowed to protest. That is against Chinese law. And do you know who's responsible for it? Deng. Deng's like, what? Like, I have anything to do with that. I mean, he was my friend. They were good friends. We've been good friends for years. So yeah, I'm going to mourn the loss of my friend. So the Gang of Four says that this was revolutionary. And that Deng is responsible. Now, Deng and Zhu were really close friends. So yeah, Deng is mourning his loss. So the Gang of Four said that because this protest originated from mourners, and Deng was the one who led the mourning, he's the one responsible for this. So he was in charge of this, like, revolution. Therefore, he can no longer serve in the government at all. So he's fired from all his positions in the government. Banned. So he's removed from all positions. So Mao's wife tells Mao, you need to appoint a new premier, and it cannot be Deng. If you put Deng in, you will lose China. And Mao's like, I fear you are correct. I mean, he likes Deng, but it's true. Deng wants a different path than I do. So he's not doing well. He is very sick. Mao says, okay, I will appoint someone else. Who do you suggest? And they're like, well, there's this guy, this guy, this guy. And he's like, oh, I want him. So Mao appoints Hua Guofeng. Thank you, I love this pronunciation. And not Deng. And I think a lot of people were surprised, including Deng, that he was not the one chosen to follow Zhu. But it's done. Hua's put in. And that's it. Deng has no political power at all. And then in September, Mao dies. So Zhu dies in January and Mao dies in September, same year, 1976. And now China falls into mourning again, because now they have lost their supreme leader. And this time, of course, the Gang of Four allows the mourning to continue much longer, because it's Mao. So the morning goes on, it goes on for a while, several months go by, now we're in, 1977. And after about 3 or 4 months of the mourning, Hua is like, okay, now it is time for us to get back to business. And everyone's kind of like, okay, he doesn't remove all the stuff from Tiananmen Square or anything like that. As my first order of getting back to business, I am ordering the arrest of the Gang of Four. They were like, you can't do that. And he's like, but I can. And I did. So he orders the arrest of the Gang of Four. So like Mao's wife is like being arrested and she's like, you won't get away with this. And he's like, but I did. So he orders the arrest of the Gang of Four, which immediately makes him like a hero. People hated the Gang of Four. They were like mean, and they're the ones who ordered, all the mourning stuff to be gone for Zoo. And so people were like so glad, like, yay! So happy that the Gang of Four are arrested, like probably like waving at them. This is great. So Deng is then pardoned. So sorry, I know they kicked you out of all your positions. We're going to bring you back. It's going to be great. So Deng is pardoned of everything they accused him of, and you're forgiven and all of this, and they bring Deng back. And then Deng's like, oh, this is great. Now we can start a new China, and I have some really great ideas. And Hua's like, that's great. I want to hear all your ideas. And so Deng's like, okay, I really think that capitalism is the way we need to go. We need to bring in capitalism. And Hua's like, no, we are communist, socialist, not capitalist. This is not democracy. And Deng's like, we can have both. There's no reason why you can't have capitalism and communism. One's political, one's economical. They can both work. And Hua's like, nah, I don't think that's true. And Deng's like, no, I'm serious. I've had some time. I've been thinking about this. And Hua's like, yeah, I don't think that's where we're going. And Deng's like, well, it's the way of the future. And I have enough followers that, this is how it should be. And Hua's like, well, are you threatening me? And Deng's like, no, I'm not threatening you. I'm just saying I have enough supporters in the government that if you don't really listen to me, we could probably take you out. And Hua's like, you are threatening me. And he's like, that's not a threat. I'm just trying to convince you that this is what you should do. So Hua resigns. Most people say not really by choice. I mean, he does resign by choice. He is not resigned the way, Deng was retired. But he knew Deng was right. Like, Deng has all these supporters and that they would turn against him. So Hua just decided to get out, and so he resigned. So he's responsible for Deng coming back. He's responsible for Deng, really, resuming his power there, and then he resigns. Now, Deng gets the people that he is friends with in the government to appoint his protege as the new premier, who will be the premier for ever. Not Deng himself. Deng's old. I need someone who's gonna basically do what I say, and then when I die, because I'm gonna die, all right, we'll continue to lead China down that path. It can't be me. I'm gonna die. I'm old. It can't be me. It has to be someone who's gonna have a legacy, who's gonna live for years. So, here we go. Another Z. We'll go with Joe on this one. We're gonna call him Joe. All right, Deng's protege. But he really is just a puppet. He will do whatever Deng says. So he is the face, but Deng is calling all the shots, and everyone in the world understood that. Kind of like the puppet regimes that you have in the Eastern Bloc. All right, it's the same idea except it's in one country. So everyone kind of got that Deng's calling the shots. So it's really Deng doing all of this. All right, Joe is just kind of like the face, but Deng's the one doing all of it. All right, so one of the first things he does is he announces that China is now entering what we call Beijing Spring. Sounds nice. Sounds nice. Beijing, Beijing Spring. Spring! It's a word associated with rebirth. Arab Spring or any other spring where things change. It's time for change. So this is Beijing Spring, the time for China to change. Where he announces that he is going to begin to allow criticism. Now, hold on. Because I don't want you to confuse this with Gorby, right? Where Gorby was like, I want you to tell me what's wrong with the government, blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. You may criticize the Cultural Revolution. And only the Cultural Revolution. So the Cultural Revolution was when Mao told the masses to turn on the capitalists. So that was a bad idea, and you are allowed to say, oh, Mao did something wrong. I will allow you to say that. But only that. Only that. Because honestly, that's the only area of contention between Mao and Deng. Everything else, Mao was supported by Deng. So therefore, don't criticize Mao. You're not criticizing him as a person. You're not criticizing what he wanted for China, what he has done for China. The only thing you're criticizing is his whole view of capitalists, because that was wrong. So if you want to criticize that, you can. But don't criticize anything else about Mao. Still my friend. Okay. Then we begin the 4 modernizations. The 4 areas that Deng wants to focus on modernizing China. It is 1979. I mean, we are moving into the 21st century, and China is so far behind the rest of the world in these 4 areas. So this is where we are going to focus. Yes, you do need to know that. The economy. Obviously, the economy. All right, we're struggling. The whole world is struggling in 1979. By 1979, even in the U.S., our unemployment is almost at 13%. We're in the worst possible place, and it's echoed all throughout the world and in China. They're really struggling. So we need to fix this. So that's his job. I'm going to fix our economy. Agriculture. Yes, everything that Mao did was great. However, we're not producing sufficient food for literally 1 billion people. There has to be renovations done in agriculture to modernize, to bring us into the 21st century. Science and technology. We're so far behind in science and technology. I mean, we have a few places where we've made some gains, but other than that, we haven't been putting money into science or technology to modernize China in that way. And it will happen. And national defense. Yes, we have a nuclear bomb. China does by 1979. We can, but our nuclear bomb, in comparison to our major enemy right now, which is the USSR, we're so far behind them. I mean, if we actually went to war, it would be their super modern, ultra, MIRVs that have multiple, warheads in one missile, and ours, which are like single. Like we have to step up our game. So those are the 4 big areas. So the following is kind of the stuff that goes down in China, how he attempts to modernize it over the course of the next few years. Some capitalism. Only some. It starts with his allowing foreign companies to come to China and build facilities. The first one is Boeing. Boeing's a big deal. Boeing makes all the airplanes in America. They're a huge, huge, huge company. And they're going to allow them to come in, and they can employ Chinese workers who will work for significantly less money than American workers. Coca-Cola's next. Another huge bottling company that has, if you did not know this, Coca-Cola bottles all over the world. Still, to this day. That will bring in foreign money. We can tax them. They'll be paying workers, so our workers will be getting money. That's our first step in kind of moving things forward. So some foreign companies, that's what this is. Local businesses, like merchants. In China, the merchant class is like centuries old. Family hands down their shop to the oldest family member, who hands it down to the oldest family member, and it has been like that for hundreds of years in the merchant part of China. So you have, the communists came in and said, your shop now belongs to the government, but you guys still run it. So you still have dad who runs the shop. It's just the government's shop now, who's handing it down to his son who runs the shop. It's just the government's shop now. And what Deng did is he said, look, If you can show me records that your family has owned this shop for, generations, I will turn ownership of the shop back to you. But you have to apply. So merchants are like lining up to apply, because if they control their shop, they control the money. But you had to apply, you had to be approved. If your family has any dissidents in them, if you had people who were protesting in Tiananmen, you're done. You're not getting, your application's denied. But if your family has been law-abiding, upstanding citizens, never caused any trouble, and can prove that you have owned this shop for generations, you will get ownership of your shop back. So some local businesses got control of their own shop again. One country, two systems. That's what he said. We have capitalism and communism. I am defying what everyone said could not be done, and very successfully. Now, the merchant class is very small. Most people in China, they have 1 billion people, most people in China are really rural farmers. So, to help them, he gave them more control of their farms. Instead of being told how much they could grow whatever they want and sell it to whomever they want. So they now have really total control of their farms. It's now their farms. And government regulation is lifted for literally hundreds of millions of peasants, giving them back control of their land. And so he's winning the people over in that way. Hong Kong. He made an arrangement with England that in 1990 something, I don't remember. In the 1990s, Hong Kong would revert to British rule. And that bridged the tie between them and England. He does the same thing with Macau and Portugal. It will resume to Portuguese control in whatever it was, 1997. So he's trying to mend the bridges. Our bridge is already mended, right? We already are friends. Détente, thank you, Nixon. All right? So now he's trying to mend bridges with the rest of the world as well, including his enemy to the north, Russia. Now, Brezhnev and Mao couldn't stand each other. They almost went to war. Remember, Nixon's playing them off against each other. But Gorbachev is now in control. And Gorbachev, right, Mr. Glasnost, Perestroika, all these great things, doesn't want, fighting. And so Deng is like, hey, Gorby, why don't you come visit? Gorbachev's like, absolutely, we can, mend our two countries. We have a, troubled past. And so Gorbachev comes and visits with them. They have a good talk and blah, blah, blah. So then Gorbachev is invited to speak at the University of Beijing. So he goes to the University of Beijing, and he's got this crowded, I think they had to move it outside. So many people wanted to come hear Gorbachev speak. And so Gorbachev is telling them about how, in modern society, you have to tell the government what you don't like about them so that they'll help fix it. And, this is what I'm doing in Russia, and it's working really well. People are, motivated and blah, blah, blah. And he's telling them, you should criticize the government. Tell them what's wrong so they know what to fix. And the students are all like, yes, that's a great idea. That's such a great idea. So Gorbachev leaves, and the students are like, we're unhappy. We want this. And Deng's like, shut up. You don't have any say. Go back to school. And they're all like, oh. So after Gorbachev's visit, where he encourages criticism, the students form this protest movement where they want more say in the government. They want to be able to elect officials, to serve on committees, to do what Russia's doing. Russia's still communist, and that's what they're doing. They're encouraging students to come, and they're encouraging people of Russia to get involved in the government, and that's what we want. So the students at the university begin doing these protest rallies, protesting for democracy. And Deng is like, no! And all the hardliners that are real strict socialists who have criticized Deng, saying you're being too lenient with capitalism, are all like, you see what you started. You brought in a little bit of capitalism and your country is falling apart. You have lost control. You need to get it together. And Deng's like, we got this. We got this. Shut them up. So the leader of the student protest, who was a student himself, is gunned down. And the word on the street is that will happen to all of you if you don't stop. Now, of course, parents are freaking out, like, you can't participate in this anymore. I'm not losing my kid. But he's dead. So what happens is, of course, in mourning, you go to Tiananmen Square, where they have the mourning monument. And so students from all over, not just Beijing, but from all over China start showing up and, placing, things down in this mourning for the student who was killed. And so Deng bans the mourning. He was an agitator, a dissenter, a rebel. He will not be mourned publicly. And so he bans the protest, which of course causes the students to protest more. In his memory, he died as a protester. So to honor him, we will protest. And so here we go. So the student, leader is killed. Sad face. The mourners go to Tiananmen Square, where they start mourning. The problem is, Deng didn't stop it right away. He didn't say, what are you guys protesting for right away? Arrest the protesters. He was like, they'll get tired of it and they'll go home. And it was a mistake. Within 30 days, there are 1 million protesters. Now it's out of control. And he knows it's out of control. And he is like, if he doesn't do something now, they win. So he calls the army and says, move in. And so tanks start rolling through the streets, heading towards Tiananmen Square. The military starts moving in, and the protesters are like, we're not moving. There's very few images of this, but there is one, really popular one. I know if you haven't seen it, you should Google it, where you have a college kid, standing, a tank's coming towards him. And so the tank, turns to, go around him, and so the kid moves like this. So the tank turns this way, and he moves like this. Finally, he's arrested. But the military gets there, and they're like, you must disband. And they're like, we will not. And so they open fire. Now, this is known as the Tiananmen Square Massacre. The actual number of deaths and injured has never been revealed. I don't even know if we'll ever really know. Accounts range from several hundred to a couple thousand. Could be more, could be less. China kept this, the actual numbers under wraps, no one can know. But it stopped the movement. Deng made it very, very clear, and I wrote it as best I could, there is no democracy in China. And there is no democracy in China in 2016. So that was the last big movement to kind of end communism in China, and it was put down pretty ruthlessly. So here we go. Tiananmen Square turns into a protest for democracy. There are over 1 million students participating. Deng sends in the troops and the tanks, and this is a massacre, and there is no democracy. So, Communism in Crisis, which is the title of this whole thing, it is in crisis. In China, the crisis ends in massacre. The end. It's different in the countries we talk about tomorrow. So, each individual country has a different end by 1989. This one is China. Questions on China? Yes?
What exactly is a hardline?
Hardliner is someone who believes something to the letter. So communist hardliners are like, it's this way and no other way. There is no fudging, no leniency, no nothing. It is what it is. Like it. Or die. Other questions?